Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Business of Property. I'm your host from Property Development Australia, 𝗪𝗟𝗃. Every week, we interview superstar guests in the property development space that share their expertise, their deals, their stories to help empower, build, and grow our community of property developers. So, hello to Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube land. Give me a shout out if you're here with us and pop your comments below. So our guest today is Arun Birla from Uber Dream Homes, who will be talking to us about infill developments and finding basically the diamonds in the rough in established suburbs. Arun is a buyer's agent, but he's got a very special skill in terms of identifying um, some pre-market, and also we talk about undervalued. Sorry, I have a bit of a stutter there. Undervalued properties. I won't give up too much more, but I'd like to introduce down to the business of property. Arun, how are you today?
Good evening, Cheryl. I'm so excited to be here on the business of property. And
Absolutely fantastic.
I'm really looking forward to sharing my knowledge and experience with your audience.
Absolutely. Thank you, Arun. You have been part of the community for a while, so it's about time that we have you on board. We obviously have seen your comments in terms of a few things that often come up: mortgagee and possession, undervalued properties, and you always have some really valuable comments around it. And hence, so I said, hey, let's do a session. But let's. I know you put together a few slides for us, and you're going to share quite a bit of value. So maybe let's start a little bit about your background history in the property space, Arun.
Sure. Um, so I have been a property investor since 1995. That's when I first bought my home. And then in 2000, I bought my first investment property, which was a unit, and also upgraded my home. Then in 2013, I upgraded my home, which is my current dream home. And then in 2019, I bought a very boutique investment property, if I may call it, which I will share the details with you very shortly.
Excellent. And what are the types of, I know you're going to be sharing this, what have you found to be, I guess, if you may call it, a bit of your secret sauce?
Okay, so the secret sauce is one, buy at the right location. Uh, Two, buy at a location which is going to grow in the short term, not in the long term. Because, and I'll go through it in a little bit more detail later. The third is to buy below market price from a motivated vendor and create win-win solutions. Um, and fourth, I think the most important is what this community is about, the development. So we add value and manufacture equity.
Excellent. So why don't you dive into some of the slides and let's have a look at what you have to share with us today. Um, what do you mean by ideal types of property for small scale development, Arun?
Okay, so if we are doing development in uh, we could do development in a greenfield suburb, or we could do development in an established suburb, right?
Mm-hmm.
As we are talking about smaller scale developers, mom and dad investors, and do somebody doing a duplex or a granny flat, and a small subdivision, that type of thing. So we do not have the scale to compete with the large developers, right? So if we are going into greenfield suburbs, we are competing against them. So there's no way we can win them, because they are going to buy in bulk and get a volume discount. We can't do that. So
Mm,
that's why I suggest buying an established suburb. So that's number one. Number two reason for doing that is we want to create a product which is scarce. and therefore commands premium, right? Now, if we create a brand new house in a, let's say, a greenfield suburb like Showfields or Marsden Park, there's nothing unique about it. Every house there is more or less new, right? So
Mhm.
you're not creating a unique product which will command a premium. Whereas if we create a brand new home in an established suburb, it is a rare commodity and people are willing to pay a premium. For example, I'll share my personal experience with you. I was looking for a property in Epping, uh, 1 kilometer from the station, brand new, and that was my specification. And there was only, and I was looking for a 4 bedroom home on a roughly about say 450 square meter land. That was my specification.
Mhm.
And after like more than a year of searching, there was only one property on the market which met my requirements, but it was more than my requirements because it was 750 square meters of land and it was 5 bedroom. So I had to pay a lot of extra money, but I was happy to pay because there was not much other choice. So just re-emphasizing the point that it's a rare commodity which commands premium and people are willing to pay more than what they would normally pay, because people want to live in established suburbs because it has got the infrastructure, the shopping, the station, the high, uh, it's easy to get around, and the shopping and the schools and everything else, right? They don't want to increase their commute to work.
Mhm.
So do you want me to go on to the slideshow and
Yeah,
get on to
absolutely.
that?
So, yeah, so in established suburbs, what have you sort of established are sort of the ideal types? And maybe we can jump to one of your slides for that.
Right. Okay. Just give me a sec while I work out how to move on the slides because there are too many screens going on here. Um,
Technology. That's totally
right.
fine.
Okay. So what we'll cover in this webinar is about a bit about setting the context, which is what you have done, and who is going to benefit. And it's not just the developers, right?
Mm.
So it will be the homeowners and as well as the investors, right? And I'll share a bit about my property investing journey, my real estate credentials, and what investment, which we have briefly touched upon already. Um, we'll also talk about why most of the investors, like typically more than 90% of the investors, own only one or two investment properties, and how they can do better.
Mm.
And we'll, strategy is a very critical component, and there are too many people talking about development strategy, acquisition strategy, and so many different strategies, but not many people talk about the sourcing strategy. So that's what I will focus on, and that's what is relevant from a buyer agent perspective as well. Then I'll share you about my latest deal. And then with all that background, then we will talk about what does a developer need and what is the number one discounted property type which fits that bill and how we can create a win-win as a solution out of that. And then finally, we'll summarize and make sure the objectives that we have set are achieved.
Mm.
Okay, so with that said, and before I continue anything further, I just want to put on this disclaimer. I'm not providing any advice. I don't know your personal circumstances or your financial objectives, and the information shared is general in nature and prepared for informational purposes only. So just to set the context, this type of development we are talking about is very simple developments like a granny flat. For somebody who's a home buyer who doesn't know much about development, that is at the simplest, level, lowest level of complexity. Or it could be a duplex, triplex, townhouses, small subdivision. So we are not talking about large. So we already covered why we are talking established suburbs, because we want a level playing field. We can't compete with big developers, and big developers are not interested in established suburbs because they cannot get large plots of land. And we want to create a sought after product which commands a premium. Yeah. So whom is this for? So if you are a home buyer and you want to live in a dream house, customized to your needs, in a suburb of your choice, at a discount to market price, this is for you. You need to pay attention. It is a tall order, but let's see if we can deliver on that. Then there are investors or flippers who want a property from a motivated vendor at a slight discount, and then they can renovate and add value and flip it. And the focus obviously is on the developers and builders who want to create brand new homes in established suburbs and sell at a premium. Yeah. Am I going at the right speed, Cheryl?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so we will just share who I am. I'm a property strategist and a real estate buyer agent, and I do not do any property sales or property management in the business. I focus only on two things, which is sourcing properties and negotiating the purchase. For those viewers who haven't come across a buyer agent, because it's a not a it has not been in the market for a long time. It's a relatively new profession. About only 3% of the agents are buyer agents. So I've just listed in brief what a buyer agent does. I will not go into more details for time's sake. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to read it, and then we'll move on. My qualifications, I have done a few courses. Ben Handler, one of the only, I think he's the only person in Australia who does a course which is focused on buyer agents. There are plenty of other courses which are focused on selling agents. I've done Dominic Gribisa's real estate course, which talks about buying properties from motivated vendors. And I've done course with Mark Rolton, and also I'm a member of Rob Flux's property development network, where it's all about development. And Dale Moment's business blueprint course is all about business, so it goes hand in hand. I socialize with so many different Facebook groups which are listed, and that sort of keeps me current in the market, and I try to help and contribute as much as I can. Now, my property journey. These are selected highlights. I already gave you more details in the intro. The main thing to take away from this slide is the first property was in February 2000, and that has given me annualized capital growth of 3.8%, and now I've got to 67%. Now that compares with your typical development project return of 20%. Now, this is a very special deal, one-off deal. I don't think I'll be able to replicate that. And we will be soon talking about details, so you will shortly know why I don't think I'll be able to repeat that performance. Do you have any questions, Cheryl, at this point in time?
None for me so far. And I know we just like I said, we touched a little bit about your secret sauce, your investing recipe, which is
Correct.
in terms of the strategy, location. Talk to us a little bit about why you need a strategy, why what this strategy and property mean.
Okay, so the strategy is required because if you look at the statistics I mentioned to you before, 90% of the investors do not end up with one or two investment properties, and that is not sufficient for most people for retirement, though they may have other investments apart from the property, but I'm talking very general, right?
Mm.
So there's the strategy has got several different components. Okay, so there is, for example, acquisition strategy, there is negotiation strategy, there is development strategy, and so on and so forth. So you need that to get the maximum return on your money. Now, that may be, you might not be optimizing your returns because you might be choosing the wrong location, or let's say not the best location, or it could be and you're not buying at the right price, or you're just paying the market rate or overpaying for the property. And I think the most important, most common is that people adopt buy and hold strategy and has no add value or manufacturer equity component. So they are depending on the market value for for the property to rise in value before they can jump onto their next property. So getting back to my recipe, so we want to choose the location for capital growth. Now, that in itself is not is important, but not sufficient. If you want to do better than that, what you need to do is time it as well. Because let's say we have got two situations where one property grows by, let's say, remains flat in the first year and grows by 25% in the next year, and then you are ready to borrow 20% against 80% against it, so it funds the equity for your next property, right? The second property, let's say you choose a property where it grows 25% in the first year, but 0% in the next year, right? So the total growth is exactly the same. But the benefit for you in the second scenario is you can go into buying your next property at the end of the first year. So that just accelerate the process.
So
Okay.
how do you find those locations that you know are going to go boop, like this to start with and not end up going like this?
Yeah.
Mining towels, for example.
Great question, Sharal. Uh, so if I were to look at what I learned from Mark Rolton, he talks about infrastructure. So see where there is new train lines, new motor highways, new Westfield shopping towns, and new schools and all that sort of thing, right? So let us say if you do all that exercise and you narrow down on a suburb, so we know that capital growth is going to happen. The problem still remains. We don't know exactly when it will happen. So we want the capital growth as soon as possible, right? So this simple solution is to talk to an expert. There are people who do this for a living, right? So and it's so cheap. The report is so cheap, and you can get it customized for your requirements, right? So there are a couple of people that immediately come to my mind who are very well-known figures. One is 𝗬𝗏𝗃,
Mm.
and the second is John Lindeman. Both are extremely good. Both publish a number of reports, which are general papers. So they could be either Australia-wide, or they could be related to your state, or they could be regional, and they could be, they call it like cheapies. If you have a very low amount of borrowing capacity, then you can still invest. Okay.
Hmm.
So, I mean, these reports are available for less than $500. Now, imagine even if it make 1% difference, in additional capital growth, it will pay you, tens or hundreds of times over. So it's a very, very easy resource. Anybody can do very easily. So
Ex-
the so the two people, as I said, very well known, John Lindemann, who's uh, uh, claims that his predictions are more than 90% correct, and Terry Ryder, both are excellent.
mm. And
So that's a
and
very easy solution, and that's a very common question: where to buy. So that
yeah, yeah,
hopefully that answers the question, and it's yeah, anybody can do it.
absolutely. And then the next one is, okay, we've established where I'll buy. How do you time the market? So this is the question that we are get asked all the time. I see,
Correct.
there are property clocks as well.
Yes.
What are the ways to effectively time a market?
Okay. So the solution that I suggested, getting these reports from these two gentlemen, they produce the reports all the time. So it takes into account the capital growth, the timing as well. So it's
Mm.
you hit both the birds with a single stone, in the sense you take care of both the problems. Does
Yeah,
that make
okay.
sense?
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, I mean, for the everyday person, what you're suggesting is look to the experts that are doing this all the time.
Yeah,
They're property analysts, they're property strategists as well. So that's
absolutely.
sort of,
Because
looking at the locations for growth. Sorry, I interrupted.
no, no, that's okay. I was saying absolutely because they are the experts. They do this like day in and day out. So why not leverage, and especially when it's dirt cheap?
Yes, 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 absolutely. Arun, when we spoke as well, not about just the buying strategy. You also mentioned a few things like this strategy for sourcing and the strategy for negotiation. Let's talk a little bit about that you can share with our
Okay,
audience.
sure. So I think we got some slide about that. So this is something we talked about before. I've already covered that, why we need a strategy. So
Mm,
I'll just give you a couple of seconds for people to just glance through it. And you also asked me about the types of strategy. So there are different types of
mm,
strategy. And so there's sourcing strategy, acquisition, negotiation, and so on and so forth. I will not read them all out. The strategies in the top block are what a real estate buyer agent can help you with, right?
mhm,
The strategies in the second block is what a mortgage broker can help you with. The strategies in the third block is where a person like me can point you in the right direction, and there are other people who can help. So I've got a general overview, but obviously, if you need expert opinion, then I can point you in the right direction.
mhm,
Now, so I think as a buyer agent, the focus is on sourcing this strategy. Um, Sorry, Cheryl, can you just, is that the question you were asking about, the sourcing
that's right.
strategy? Yeah, okay.
Yes,
So
correct.
we have caught up there with the slides. Okay. So there are several components of the sourcing strategy that we need to look at. So what type of vendor we are buying on? Obviously, there are millions of properties on
Mm,
realestate.com.au and all that sort of thing, right? So we want to buy from a motivated vendor who has got for whom price is important for everybody, right? But for whom there are certain other things which they are looking for in a deal, right? And and it may be possible to satisfy those needs without without costing anything more to us. So that's the type of motivated vendor we are looking for. Okay, so that's number one. Second is whom do we want to buy it from? Either we can buy it direct from the vendor or through an agent, which is a sales agent, which is a professional negotiator. Obviously, we stand a better chance of getting a bargain if we go direct from the vendor because they are not professional negotiators. They don't do this day in and day out. So we are likely, and when it's the vendor directly, we can get to talk to them. We can read their body language, get more information out of them, and we are in a better
Mm,
position to negotiate. So the more
mm.
you know about the other party, the more you are in a position to create a win-win solution and get a better deal. Third point is whether it's offline or online. So the properties are sometimes offline. So sometimes people just want privacy, so they don't want to get it on the market. And properties also are offline for a certain duration before a property can go to the market, right? So when somebody wants to sell a property, they have to first prepare the contract before the agent can put it on the online and market it. So there is a certain period of time during which it will not be on online. So that is called pre-market, right? Off market or on market, I disagree with what is the common connotation of off market is, and what generally people refer to off market is actually pre-market. When a property is called off market, in my personal definition, that means it is not on the market by
Mm,
the words. That means it's we are going direct to the vendor. It's not on the market, so we do not have any competition from other buyers. There is no sales agent involved. So that is my definition of the uh, of market. Then private treaty or auction, that's another one. So in summary, the most profitable option I have found is off-market property, direct from a rotated vendor by private treaty.
excellent. And I
So
know we've got a nice little table that breaks these down, which I found really,
correct.
really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that will sort of nail it down a little bit better. So, as I mentioned, most of the time when you hear off market, you need to confirm whether somebody is offering you a pre-market property or an off-market property. So with a pre-market property, is normally a sales agent might come and tell you, it's a pre-market, no, it's an off-market property. Okay, so you need to question. If it's a pre-market property, if it's then why is a sales agent getting involved? If
Mm,
a sales agent is getting involved, that means it is on market, right? It's just that it is not online. So there's a difference between online and off market. So this is a difference which I am trying to highlight between the two. This is the pre-market and that is the off market. In the off market, we are talking directly to the vendor, whereas in the case of pre-market, we are talking to a sales agent.
mhm,
And the second difference is in the case of pre-market, it is in both the cases it is not online. However, what is the impact of that as far as our negotiation and the price negotiations are concerned? If it is a pre-market, it's not online, so there is it doesn't have the widest audience, but it has got limited. It has limited audience because the selling agent is not only talking to you, but he's talking to everybody else in his database, right?
mhm,
Whereas with the off-market property, you are possibly the only person negotiating the purchase. There might be another person like me who was specialized and who might be talking, but there's practically very little competition compared to pre-market properties. So that's number one benefit. Secondly, if you're talking in the case of off-market, we are talking directly to the vendor, whereas in the pre-market, we are talking to a sales agent. So therefore, uh, obviously, talking directly, as I said, to a vendor increases our negotiation capability because we are going to talk directly to them. We find out what their motivation is. We can read their body language. Easier to do business. It's easier to create a win-win solution. Sometimes the sales agent can become a roadblocker. And
Mm.
obviously, if there's no sales agent involved, there is no commission there. So we sort of make the process more efficient.
Absolutely. So I think when people say, "Oh, it's off market with an agent," what they're really saying it's pre-market, and the agent has either gone to their contacts, or and if they don't probably get a sale, and the vendor is open to it, or the owner's open to it, they'll more than likely go to market with that
Correct.
property. Anyhow, um, Arun, I'd really like to explore, and I'd like to go into your deals, and and this is a really interesting one. We've talked about, like, it's quite
Yes.
an unusual property that you're securing. So let's spend some time on this, because people might not have even thought about this strategy, or even considered this to be property. So let's
Sure.
spend some time on that.
So let's talk about this deal. It's a unusual property because it's not a dwelling. It's a car space. It's a inner residential unit complex of just under 200 units. Right. So the situation was that the developer had gone into liquidation. So
Mm,
I was able to buy it for 12,500 each. I bought 5 of them in August 2019. And just last month, I've exchanged on these 3 of them for 35,000 each. So if we just summarize it, it's a capital growth of 180% in just over 2 years. Now that comes down to annualized capital growth of 67%. Now compare that with 20% development uh, uh, return on a total development cost, which is typical around that figure in a typical
mm,
development project. So that is a pretty big thing. And the funny thing is, didn't have any risk in the sense of in a development project there are risks involved with whether it's a builder, the development approval, this and that, right? There was because there was no development to be done. A car space was a car space. There was nothing to be done, so we don't have any risk to that effect, right?
mm, mm,
Now this question could be, are these deals like um, special, and how do you get to them? Uh, okay, before we get into that, let me just show you some evidence, because I prefer evidence rather than testimonials. So with the evidence, there is no need for a testimonial, because you can see it and you can verify it for yourself. So on the left hand side, you can see there is a purchase contract of sale. There's a screenshot of that. So 5 car spaces bought for 62,500,
mm,
and then on the right hand side, it's a letter from the solicitor confirming the exchange for 3 of these car spaces for 105,000. Okay. So, uh, so this property was there online. So it's a question of just this was such an unusual property, because normally, car spaces come with the units, and you don't like there are very few buyers of car spaces, and they're
mm,
common possibly more in the city rather than in a suburb like North Ryde. Okay. But what I'm trying to highlight here is it was available online. It was available for anybody to see. Very clearly says under instruction of the liquidators of the developer, right? So they are available online, but they are available off market as well. Now, obviously,
mm.
if you go off market, you have the first mover advantage. You are sourcing it even before it comes on the market. And if you can take that, then obviously you are beating others to the race. Okay.
Mm, mm. I'm interested to find out, at the time when you purchased it, was it intended purely for cash flow, or did you have some idea that actually this is undervalued, and I know that if I sell it in a few years, the value was going to go up?
Okay. I had no intention of keeping this as a long run. I was intending to flip it. Okay. So even before I had bought this property, I had done a test run
Mm,
of what rent I could get. So I had, there are a couple of apps. One is Parkhound and another is Curb. So these are apps for finding a parking space anywhere,
mm,
right? So you
mhm,
just
mhm,
enter the address, it will come up with these sort of property. So I just put in a test app, a test listing, right? And I got two people who paid the rent in advance, and they were ready to go. But I hadn't settled on their property, so I had to resist them. So that was my part of my due diligence. At least I knew that I could get this much rent, so at least my rental
mm,
yield was and also I did a bit of a due diligence in the sense that this property is very near a lot of commercial offices and all that, and there is no street parking there. That's street parking is quite costly. It's
mm,
like $4.50 an hour. So I thought I can offer this property for rent for barely 2 hours of street parking, and I'm giving them a secure 24-hour parking undercover. So it should be a no-brainer. So that was a little bit of due diligence
mm,
that I
mm,
did. And
mm,
I was there's a bit of a development element if you allow, uh, because the key element of development is we add value. So I was
mm,
thinking, I'm buying this property as vacant property. I'm
mm,
going to get a tenant. It could be a retail tenant or a corporate, preferably a corporate tenant, because they are longer leases and people have a little bit more, attach more value to a commercial tenant, right?
mm, mm,
So the idea was to buy this and find a tenant and then sell it. And I had sellers who were lined up. They were ready to go as well. But
uh,
in any project, things don't go to plan, and there are so many things happened, and finally, so I'm now selling it after 2 years.
and what sort of cap rate are you selling at? What are people buying? I mean, they're looking at the percentage rental to determine
Okay.
the sale, the purchase price, I mean?
Okay, so the way it is priced is, if you look at this, the slide, price is what you pay, value is what you get, right? So you have the same product, right? But you can sell it at different prices depending on what value it is to the person who's buying it, right? So,
Mm,
say for example, if you buy a bottle of water, what $2 or whatever it takes costs in coals, and if you're standing next to a sprinkler and you want to sell it even for half the price, $1, nobody is going to buy it because the money is available free of cost. Why would somebody pay, right?
mm,
On the other hand, if somebody is stuck in a desert, it's a question of life and death for him, right? So he'll happily pay 10 times the price. So uh, the short answer is I tried to find a buyer who had the most need. The reason I cannot go into too much more detail is because I've sold only three of the car spaces. I still need
mm.
to two, so I cannot let it too much out at this point in time. But as soon as those two are sold, then I would be happy to give more details on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I ask these questions, because it is quite out of the box. Everyone's looking for options to be able to invest, and people who don't have a huge deposit, for example. I mean, what was
Correct.
This I'm assuming, was that, did you have any lending on it? Did you have any finance, or was it purely purchase
No, it was
cash?
purely cash. So initially, when I was selling it, I put a lot of ad in my WhatsApp groups, Facebook as well, and I was willing to sell it for 25,000, right?
Mm,
Because at that price, I think I can't remember exactly, but it was giving somewhere around 8 to 10% rental yield, which is typical of a commercial property. Obviously, this is not residential, so it has to give higher yields with commercial property yields. And I couldn't sell for 25,000. And there was a small observation that I made when I was talking to one of the potential tenants. And that changed the whole scenario. I immediately upped the listing price to 50,000, double the price.
mm, mm,
And because this particular buyer came for 3 car spaces, so I gave him a bulk discount of 30%, and I was still got 10,000 more than what I was prepared to sell it for only yesterday.
yeah.
So as I said, I will be able to explain, give them a little bit more details once I have disposed of the other two, and then I can definitely dwell on it deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Mindful of timing here, Arun, and one of the things that I wanted to talk to our audience about and have you share was around discounted property, similar to
Yes,
ones that you found. So we've talked about, mortgagee in possession or developer in liquidation. Deceased estates, I know, is another area that you specialize in. Can we talk
yes,
a little bit around that? How do we, well, first of all, what's a deceased estate, and why, um, how can we find them, and why it's something to look out for?
sure. So I think with all that background set, obviously everybody has heard about there are so many different types of motivated
Mm,
sellers. So I've not put a slide for that, but there are dozens and dozens of reasons why people sell for lower price. So everybody has heard about the Ds, whether it's disease estate, divorce, distance meaning somebody's overseas, or somebody, or it could be out of a station, out of suburb agent. Um, there's so many different reasons. It could be a failed joint venture. It could be a stale listing. It could be a failed auction. It
mm,
could be so many reasons, right? So what we are talking about, so we need to get back to our subject. So I will answer your question in just a little bit by first setting the context as to what we as small scale developers need, right?
mm,
So as we said, we are trying to find land in established suburbs, which is not there, right? Very rarely you will find it. So what is the next best option? So next best option is you find a house in rundown condition with very little building value, because you're going to demolish it anyway and build a duplex, for example, right? So we don't want to lose much value, so we want to buy a rundown house, right? And we also want large blocks so that we can build multiple dwellings and gain some scale, right? And the terms that we want to look for is, as soon as we exchange, we want to lodge a DA application, right?
mm,
So we need to make sure that we get the owner consent, and that's just part of the negotiation. Second thing is we want to have access to the property for exchange. For example, we might need a soil test or whatever, reasons. And ideally, we want to prefer a longer settlement period, right? So we as developers, we know how to get a good return on our money, right? The normal person, uh, if you go to the average financial planner, they will say, if you're planning your retirement, you base it on 5% return. But we
mm,
know as developers, we can do much better. So if we delay our settlement period, we are getting a much higher return, and we can give part of that back to the vendor in the form of a higher purchase price, and we
mm.
are make it a win-win solution for both parties, right? So with that background set, so that's what we as a small scale developer need. So the number one discounted property type for developers, as I said, there are a number of situations where people sell for lower value than market because of their particular situation, right? Somebody, for example, they have over leveraged themselves and suddenly they are getting into sickness or a job loss or whatever. So there's so many
mm,
situations. So what we are looking for is a property type where a motivated vendor, the requirements match with our requirements, and we can do a deal as a creative win-win solution. So if you look at a disease estate, first of all, it's available throughout the year, right? So time is not a constraint. Secondly, it's available anywhere and everywhere. There's no, it's not that it's available in western suburbs or rich suburbs or whatever, right?
mm,
Third thing is its availability is not impacted by the economy or the property market. The market may go up or down, and the economy may, you might have a problem with China or whatever. It's just a fact of life. People are born, people live, people die. Okay,
mm.
and there are lots of properties available. And I think the most important thing to create a win-win solution is we have potential to add non-financial value without costing us, right? So that's the basis of a good deal where both the parties uh, come out as a winner. Yeah.
And how I
So
know with deceased estates, is it is it true that often because it's a deceased estate that the settlements, in terms of settlement terms, are harder to negotiate?
correct. Okay. So I think I didn't answer your previous question in detail. So the disease estate is a situation where somebody dies, and he leaves behind a disease estate, which may include all his assets, and that may also include a property, right?
Mm,
So in our context, we are talking about a property which is owned by a person who has passed away. Yeah.
yeah.
Now, two things can happen. Either the person left a will, or he didn't leave a will, right?
Mm,
In both the cases, then if it has to go to the court, because they have to decide whether whatever the will is the latest will and it's a valid will, and there are no conflicts of interest, and everybody gets a proper share, right? If it's a person dies without a will, then somebody has to apply for a letter of administration and all that sort of thing. So just getting into the
mm, mm,
but what I'm trying to say is there is a long court process
mm,
which can take a few months if it is everything goes smoothly. If there is conflicts in the family, it can go for several years, right? So uh, let's so having answered your previous question, now let's go back to how the developer needs are met by the
mm.
deceased estate, right? So
Correct.
as I said, these are available in established suburbs. Uh, People at the end of their life are not interested in the upkeep of the property. They are
Mm,
interested in their health. They are interested in the relationships. They are interested in other things, right? The property upkeep, their physical condition may not allow them, right? And they may run out of money. So also, okay. And obviously, the baby boomers, they had large blocks. We had, quarter-acre block was quite common, and now with the trend towards the smaller and smaller blocks, I mean, I've read. Now people are building houses in even 180 square meters. That's
mm,
like it's just so small. Whereas if you're talking about 50 years back, the baby boomers generation, they were at like 600, 800, 1,000, 1,200 and more, right? So there are large blocks. So it takes all those conditions and the terms. They don't have a problem giving us the owner consent to lodge the application, because property is lying idle anyway, right?
mm, mm.
Uh, they don't. They just want to get rid of the property and share the profits amongst the beneficiaries, right?
Yeah.
And we again, the property is lying vacant, so access to property after exchange is not an issue. right?
Yeah.
The settlement is where there might be a little bit of negotiation involved, where you have to, and you might have to compromise, or you, depending on the vendor's situation, right?
Hmm.
So you're not going to get everything. I mean, either you're going to get the price or you're going to get the terms. But here, it's a very close match. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it just comes down to, I mean, who do you negotiate with? Who does a developer negotiate with?
Okay. So it again depends on um, how you source the property. Remember, we talked about in the sourcing strategy, either you go direct to the vendor, or you going through a sales agent.
Mm.
So if it is on market, you're negotiating with the sales agent. If you are sometimes it is advertised as a disease estate property, sometimes it's hidden. It depends on how the sales agent wants to market it,
Mm.
right? So just like in the example that I showed you, my property deal, it was obvious, it was written in clear, it was liquidation property. So similarly, sometimes they market as disease estate, it's in bold, so that it attracts more attention and they get more buyers. Some people, some agents will hide that fact, because sometimes it may give the impression that they might get many buyers, but they will make low ball offers.
Hmm.
So it's the strategy varies from agent to agent, right? Um, so that is if it is on market. However, it may be if it is off market, then obviously you are negotiating directly with the vendor.
Mm.
Okay. So now let's get into a little bit of theory, or a bit of calculations, or mathematical interpretation, whatever you call it. Uh, what is the value components for a seller, right? So there is two components. One is the financial value, another is the non-financial value, right? So the net result, which is the financial value, is the sales price minus all the outgoings. So the outgoings might be selling agent fees, all the taxes,
Mm.
and negative cash flow till settlement. And if the vendor is overseas, he might have to come from overseas, and there's time off work, accommodation, travel costs, and so on. Right now, similarly, there is non-financial components,
Mm.
uh, which is, supposing it was a, now I'm sort of making it a bit more generalized. Let's say if it was a mortgage repossession case, right? If we can do a off-market deal with them, right, we can save their credit history, right? Supposing, let's say, a person has got some equity in the property, but that he has run out of time, and now the before the bank takes over control, if the bank takes over control, they can't do anything, and it will be marked in their credit history, and they cannot get a loan for 7 years, right?
Mm.
Or 6 or 7 or whatever it is, right? That credit history protection is much more valuable to them than losing even $100,000, right? So we can give them something which doesn't cost us anything, but it is of immense value to the vendor, right? So similarly, let's take another example. Somebody is, let's say, in a divorce situation. So if this quicker we settle it, it's the
Mm.
easiest to end of their problems and a stressful situation. Both parties can get on with their lives, right? Or a different situation, let's talk about the upgrader. Somebody has to upgrade, but they cannot keep the existing house and buy the next house, right? So they have to
Mm.
either they can keep only one house. That's their financial situation, right? So the problem for them is, do we buy first or do we sell first, right? If they buy first and they're not able to sell, then they risk losing the deposit. On the other hand, if they do it the other way, then they might have, if they are not able to secure their next property, they will have to relocate to temporary, rent out a temporary accommodation. So there are problems. So we solve their problem and we get paid handsomely for it. That's
Mm.
how it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So I won't go through in more detail because just given you enough examples to understand, appreciate what we are talking about. So there's
Yeah.
non-financial value, which is we provide something of value to them, and it doesn't cost us anything. Okay.
Mm. Mm.
Especially for these upgraders, because as developers, we are looking for longer settlement. We can get our DA done, and they are happy as well.
Yeah, yeah. I really like that you've mentioned this, non-financial values and financial values, because it is it's part of the negotiation, like you said. It's not always the money. There's so many other non-monetary aspects of a deal that
Absolutely.
that create value, and you mentioned value as opposed to price. I think that's
Correct.
really important part, where that's why, as part of the negotiation process, and I always say it's part of it's marketing and sales, as developers, whether you like it or not, you are doing some level of sales, and sales is about needs and wants. So importantly, understanding what people's situations are, what their needs are, and then being able to mold situations so that the seller can see what does that value um, costs for them. I think the last two slides that you've gone through are really, really quite impactful in that
Right.
aspect.
Right. I think we'll go into a little bit more detail with that. So how do we create a win-win solution, right? As far as the seller is concerned, he is looking at maximizing SV, which is the total seller value, which consists of financial as well as non-financial value, right?
Mm,
We as a buyer, we are trying to minimize the sale price. So there is a bit of, you could say, conflict. But truly speaking, it's still, we are trying to minimize and maximizing two different things. So we can still sort of create a win-win solution, because the seller goal is to maximize SV. The buyer
mm,
goal is to minimize SP, and both are not mutually exclusive.
mm,
Okay. So the secret to discount is to minimize the minimize the components of sale price, which is the bigger block here. Minimize the components of sale price which reduce the SFV, and maximize S non-financial value,
mm,
right?
mm,
For example, let's say if we go off market, that means we are eliminating sales agent fees, right?
mhm,
If, for example, if we do a deal, let's say if we exchange before December 31st, we are saving the land tax for the vendor. Now,
mhm,
depending on our situation, it may or may not cost us anything, because if supposing I don't have any other property, then and it is within the threshold, then it's not costing me anything. But for
mm,
the
mm,
vendor, it might be a different situation. So it's
mhm,
just a question of working out what works, right? So just giving you a couple of examples on the financial value. On the other hand, there's non-financial value, which I've given you some examples before, but they were general. Now let's talk specifically about the disease estate. What value do we add, right? If we now, some of the points are valid only if you go off market, right? So if we go to the direct to the vendor, and even before the probate is granted, we can they are assured that they know that as soon as the probate is granted, they will have access to the money, and they know
mm,
exactly how much they are going to get, right? It gives an immediate resolution to a family problem that might be brewing, right? Because where there is money, there is, the possibility of a conflict, right? They are also avoiding the long, stressful sale process after a very difficult period that they have gone through, right? And it allows the beneficiaries to plan ahead and move on with their lives, right? Rather than going through a long protracted period where everybody is figuring out what is happening and how much we are going to get and all that sort of thing. And that they can do it with privacy rather than conducting inspections, right?
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, so there are a few things which are specific to disease estate, and that's where we can offer value. And you get paid for people will pay extra for convenience, right? And just a few more things that we can offer, which is money savings, because it's normally the disease estate is the children have got their own properties and nobody's living there, so it's a idle high value asset. There's no income, whereas the council rates and other expenses are still they're incurring, right? So immediately puts a stop loss. If we can, the sooner we do it, the more benefit they get out of it, right?
Mhm.
And as developers, we really don't care if it's in rundown value. We are going to demolish it. We don't even have to see the property. We don't need to. They can save on the cleaning costs, renovation costs, marketing, advertising, auction costs. All those costs we can save them, right? And similarly, we can save them time as well. So that makes it uh, sort of clearly identifies a disease estate property as one of having a very close match where we can add a lot of value and do a good deal. So just before we end, I thought I'll just give you a bit of idea of where I specialize in. So I specialize in motivated vendors, and it's not just disease estate, it's liquidation, bankruptcy, or what else is there? There's a divorce and those sort of things. So there's too many cases to list. I'm thinking of writing an ebook, short ebook on
Mhm.
what are the situations where you can buy for less than the market price. The second thing I specialize in off-market properties. So that eliminates all the competition, and you're negotiating with a not with a uh, um, for want of a better word, unprofessional negotiator, and then we are eliminating the agent phase. And the last thing is I understand the development process, the things like LEP, DCP, and the slope and the easements and all those sort of things. So that's where my focus is. These things differentiate me with most of the other buyer agents. And a single property can have all the three attributes. So um, that's what it is. So let's now summarize because I think we have gone a little bit over time. So and this is the last slide. So we talked about, we said these are the objectives. So home buyers, they want to build a dream home customized to your needs in
Mhm.
a suburb of your choice at a discount to market price, right? Now, the focus of the talk has been, we have been limited by the subject title, and we are focusing on developers, right? However, the home buyers, what they can do is they can locate a discount, a disease estate property, buy at a slight discount. I don't suggest get very greedy. If you get 5% discount, that's a discount.
Mm.
That's a good enough money. Uh, a lot of press say you can go up to 10, 20, 30, 40. Yes, you can, you may get it if you're lucky, but then you're going to miss out on many other opportunities, because the main you are going to make money in a development, a small benefit by buying from discounted properties, but the major benefit is going to come from the development. So if you're trying to optimize every step of the way, then you might miss out on certain opportunities. Okay, so how can home buyers make money out of this, right? So they can buy a discounted property, and then all they need to do is they obviously will have to get a little bit out of their comfort zone, because a normal home buyer or first home buyer, or they may not be um, familiar with the development process. So they have
Mm.
to understand a little bit more about it. So they just need to understand, all they need to do is get a builder, because the builder is going to there are builders who will take care of the development approval process and who will build. And they can get us somebody like a construction lawyer who can check the contract the builder has put through and make sure that it is in their favor and there are no unfavorable terms for them. So there is a little bit of work to be done, but there is a lot to be gained, because the alternative is to buy a brand new home from a developer. Now the developer has built it. It is not customized to your needs. It is and the developer is going to charge a margin. They're going to pay the GST. They have to take care of the holding costs. So there are a lot of money which you can, as sort of, even if you're not familiar, there is a lot of buffer that even if you make a mistake, you will still be in the front. But
Yeah,
but the
fabulous.
big thing but the big thing is it will be a dream home which is customized to your needs. So that is more valuable to you than a house which has got exactly the same square meter area, built up area. Builder cost is same, but then it's not customized to your needs, so that doesn't have as much value to you,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Yeah, I think
So
there's been quite a lot of points there, Arun, and I'm just mindful that we've gone over the hour there. I'm very sure that a lot of people want to find out more about some of your the types of undervalued and off market properties that you can help them with. If you're looking for deceased estates, mortgagee in possession, um, uh, properties at developers and liquidation. Arun has obviously shared a bit of his insights there, some of the things that he's looking at, but again, uh, reminding us to think outside of the box and how we're investing or developing as well. Arun, if people want to be able to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that?
okay, I think that should have brought me to the last slide, which somehow I
Oh,
have missed.
okay. Sorry, no, we've got.
Um, but I think what we'll do, Sharon, is we might just put it in the chat.
Yeah, no problem. So we've got, and a few people did ask about who were the market commentators and analysts that you mentioned, which went 𝗪𝗏𝗏, lindemanreports.com.au as
Um,
well.
John Lindemann, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Uh,
we've got a question here. Do these strategies still work in a booming market, especially in the Southeast Queensland property market?
um, they will work in any market. However, uh, it will not work if it is on the market, because if it is on the market,
Mm,
well, I mean, there are plenty of buyers, so why would they sell for less, right?
yeah.
But if you approach off market, you're still giving those non-financial benefits, so therefore it will still work there. So I've put the my contact details, my mobile number. So happy to
Excellent.
chat with anybody who wants to know a little bit more. Um, and that's pretty much it, Cheryl.
Fantastic. So I've shared those details on Facebook. It is on YouTube as well, LinkedIn, whoever everyone is watching this. Arun at Uber Dream Homes, he's got his mobile number there. Hopefully, it's not going to be ringing off the hook tomorrow, but that's not a bad thing as well. Obviously, that means today's presentation has brought some value. So I appreciate your time, Arun, and sharing. Those of you that have joined us today. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Cheryl Leong and you'll have all the business of property videos. If you found value in our show, really appreciate you can subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to hit the like button as well. So until next week, take care, good night, and we'll see you again soon in the business of property. Bye.